let's jump to a team that we haven't mentioned yet, who I actually might shock you guys. I have coming in second place in the division, and that's the Washington Commanders. No, JQ, not the Giants. The Washington Commanders. Now, this is similar to another team we previewed a couple weeks ago. I forget it off the top of my head, but when you asked, I said when you asked me about that team, I would say, oh, they're not that very good of a team. But when I actually looked at it and did the research, I saw that I actually really like the team, and that's the same thing with the Commanders. If you asked me before I even looked at them, I would say, they're probably going to be in third place in the division. But then I look at the team and I say, you know what? And listen, I know it might come back to bite me in the ass trusting Carson Wentz, but I'm gonna trust Carson Wentz. And John's already shaking his head like,
Why?
don't fall for the trap again. But and listen, I know it was a disappointing year in Indy, right? He did. I forget the numbers of. I think it was 27 touchdowns to 7 interceptions, and I
Correct.
know those numbers.
With seven
Those numbers.
fumbles lost in there too.
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to say those numbers do lie because if you look at the whole picture, like in a vacuum, they're all right, but when you look at the whole picture, it wasn't that good, right? A disappointing. He did post over a 90 passer rating for the fourth time in his career. He'll be playing with the best wide receiver he's ever had in his career in Terry McLaurin, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, the O line is going through some changes. I'll admit. Brandon Schreff is the All Pro is gone, and they lost Eric Flowers. JQ might know him. But they did they did bring in an All Pro and Andrew Norwell and a 5-time Pro Bowler who we've talked about, and Trey Turner from
He's
or it was
solid. He was
yeah
pretty solid last
he
year,
was
right
with
guard for the
Carolina for the
Steelers.
longest time, but I think he played for the Steelers and another team I think too.
Chargers.
Yeah, so the O line's going through some changes, but they brought in guys to plug in and fill that role. I mentioned before the receiving core with Terry and Curtis Samuel, and I think there's
Jahan Dotson
they
at Penn
they
State.
just
I
they
love.
drafted a number one wide receiver right in the first round.
Jahan is
Yeah.
awesome. Can I touch on him for a second? You
Go
look
ahead,
at what
touch on
Carson
him.
Wentz was able to do last year, Michael Pittman, his second season. They then go out in the first round and say, we're going with Dotson. He's a bigger route runner that can run it very well. He can take the top over defense. We're talking about Jalen Tolbert before. I think this is a guy who, in terms of a vertical threat, Carson has that. In terms of Curtis Samuel, who can be their Diadebo, and I mean real Diadebo, he wasn't really available for them last year, you have that. Terry McLaurin, I think, if he's not top 10 receiver, is right there on the cusp, and the only reason why he hasn't proven or actually insert himself into that mix is because he hasn't even had mediocre quarterback play. Sure, he's had some moments, a Heineke or what have you, but I think Wentz, is he mediocre? I would put him around the 16 to 21 tier with Baker, Tannehill, and
He's
all
an
those
average
folks.
quarterback.
I would say, yeah, his floor is well below average. His ceiling, we saw the MVP season, that's not coming back. Wentz is just a different quarterback now. His ability to improvise and stay collected, the composure, I think, has really just disappeared. I think it's a mental thing more than anything else. I think some of the athleticism of the torn ACL is not there anymore. You're not going to see him kind of like Andrew Luck or maybe Josh Allen trying to make big time plays where he's risking his body. I feel like there is a hurdle now in his mind, and I don't know if he's ever going to be able to actually, overcome that. And that is really the limiting factor at this Commanders team. I worry about Carson Wentz's ability to lead and kind of, put the flag in the sand and say, let's go, follow me. I don't think he can do that.
So and I hear your points loud and clear. Trust me, okay? Because I still have the same reservations with Carson Wentz, but him I believe in more so than the other quarterbacks that I've said where I've said I like the team but I don't believe in the quarterback. He's the one that I say I believe in him more than those guys, especially with the talent around. I mean, Antonio Gibson, who's a dual threat out of the backfield, who's becoming a rising star in the NFL. J.D. McKissick is a very good receiving back. They drafted Brian Robinson Jr. in the third round from Alabama. We've seen the Alabama running backs and how they are able to transition to the next level in the NFL. We touched on the receiving core. Logan Thomas is on the pup list, but I expect him to be able to play this season. And he was able. He was a breakout tight end last year. Defensively, they have they got. Let's see what is it.
Speaking of the pup list,
Yeah, pup list, right? They got three. I believe it's 3 first rounders on the D line, or no, 4 first rounders on the D line. So they got Darren Payne, who they took in 2018, 13th overall. Jonathan Allen, who they took in 2017, 17th overall. And then they got Montez Sweat and the 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 guy of that defensive line in Chase Shone, who was the second overall pick. Now he is coming off a torn ACL that ended his second sophomore season last year, and he's going to miss the start of the season this year. But when he comes back, we're going to have to see that defensive line of 2020, where if you look at it, stats right here, which is just it's just so the D line in 2020 they were sixth in sacks last in 2020, and then in 2021 they dropped to 17th, and that heavily impacted the secondary because in 2020 they were number 2 in the NFL in passing touchdowns allowed with 21. Last year they were dead last and they allowed 34 passing touchdowns. So that D line needs to get the pressure because I just showed you the numbers. If they don't, that's going to impact the secondary. I have faith in that D line to get it done. They still have some talent in the backfield. They got um, a first round pick last year. They took Jamin Davis out of Kentucky to play in linebacker. In secondary, they got Kendall Fuller. They signed last year William Jackson III from Cincy. They got Bobby McCain, who they re-signed to a 2-year deal. Last year, he picked off 2 of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady. Uh, and and just to wrap up the Washington, this is one of my main points because I don't think it's an argument who the best head coach is in this division. I would hope not. It's Ron Rivera, Riverboat Ron.
Nick Sirianni might have a say about that, my man.
He
We
could
need
make
to
it
see
to
one more year of Sirianni, I think.
Yeah,
But yeah, Riverboat Ron.
Riverboat Ron is that guy, and the things that he's overcome in his in just his life in general with having cancers is admirable, and so thankful that he's still around with us and he's able to do what he loves. So I believe in Riverboat Ron. I think he's going to cultivate this team, and unlike Mike McCarthy, he is a great motivator. So I believe in Riverboat Ron, and I think they are going to give the Cowboys the toughest test this year. But like I said to start this thing off, I do think the Eagles, Washington, and Dallas are going to be close throughout this whole season.
And speaking of the defensive line, they had another top draft pick in the second round out of Alabama, and Fedarian Mathis, to add to that defensive line. And there's just so much talent there. I think it's great, just like it was last season. The worry once again is the offense supporting the defense. That big win they had in 2020 against my Steelers, the way the Steelers fell apart that season with an awesome defense like this on paper was an offense that couldn't run the ball consistently, a questionable offensive line, a limited quarterback that wasn't consistent whatsoever. Those 3 things all impact the defense negatively because they were kind of left stranded out there. And that was why last year the Commanders had, or the football team had issues when that was a team name. And of course, players were going down. Logan Thomas had a breakout year in 2020. He was out last season. I think getting him back is also, along with a healthy Curtis Samuel, a big time difference maker. But in the end, do you trust this offense to move the chains and be reliable so they could actually finish or place above Philadelphia? I doubt so. I
Nope.
trust Jalen Hurts more than Carson Wentz, and while they're in the same tier now, I'm taking Hurts any day, man. I trust him way more to lead. And more importantly, I trust that Eagles offense way more to move the chains to that defensive line than I do this Redskin Commanders football team. My apologies. I didn't do that on
Oh,
purpose.
oh.